McLean. Jake Coach's Corner.
You're listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer.
For someone to explain.
Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
All right, welcome to episode number 27 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plymer, and I'm joined today with Natascha Wesch. Natascha is Assistant Professor at Western University Faculty of Health Sciences and a mental performance consultant in a private practice. She was a Canadian senior women's national team athlete from 1992 to 2002. During her playing career, she also took up coaching. She had roles with the Canadian junior women's national team as head coach, then moved into Canadian senior women's sevens team for 3 years. And all that time as well, she coached Western University women's rugby team for 22 years and retired from that role last season to focus time and energy on family and a private practice in performance psychology consulting. She holds a PhD in sports psychology, a master's in counselling, counselling psychology, a master's in exercise biochemistry, and a bachelor's in exercise science. And I'd say you'd spend a lot of money on picture frames, putting them all up on the wall. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Natascha. So welcome.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, so that's
a long list, not on purpose.
Yeah,
I didn't know what to give you there.
No, that's all good. That it's a really interesting story, both as an athlete, a coach, and now for quite a bunch of time working in the area of psychology. What's a kind of a brief version of how you became a player into the sports psychology role?
The brief version is I got injured a few times as an athlete, and specifically, had 2 shoulder reconstructions, and I didn't want to lose my spot on the national team, so I started working with a sports psychologist, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, why don't more people know about this? And that's what triggered my interest, and so I changed my direction into sports psychology and psychology after starting with what was originally going to be medical school. So.
Oh, right. Okay. That's great. And you did all that. What universities were you at for that?
I started off at Concordia, Montreal. So I'm native of Montreal. And then I came to Western and spent a lot of money at Western.
Yeah. And then, so then you, during your time as an athlete, you took on the Western women's role, coaching role. And you just...
Yeah. Well, when I came over to Western as an athlete, they were looking for a coach, and they saw that, like, I was just asking about being a player, and they saw that I had played with the national team, or that I was playing with the national team, and so they asked if I would take on the role as coach, and I was just going to be here for a master's degree, and that was it. And so I thought, 2 years, I can do that. I can play and coach for 2 years, and then 22 years later.
Yeah, so that must have been hard after 22 years. Well, maybe you'd already decided that it was time to move your energies in other directions, but 22 years is a long time.
It is a long time. And, it wasn't just the Western team that I was doing, it was all the other teams at the same time and everything else. And so when I do something, I do it pretty full on. So, dedicating 22 years full time, and, I've had a pretty good impact on some pretty key players along the way, and a lot of players along the way. So, your job has been done when you kind of look back and go, I think it's time for somebody else who brings some passion and who maybe has the energy that I had when I started off 22 years ago to take over the program. So
yeah, and I know that feeling. Having 3 or 4 programs on the go and absolutely throwing everything at them. You've got to balance that time well, and especially when you got family and your actual real job on top of that.
That's right. Yeah. Unfortunately, coaching isn't, it's a real job. It's just not a very well-paying job. So. Yeah,
for sure. Okay. Well, I wanted to focus on, for this episode, on emotion control for coaches. That's definitely an area that I'm interested in. It's an area that's been a challenge for me, and I've made huge strides in it, and so that got me thinking. There's other coaches out there as well who struggle with this area, and so I just wanted to talk about that. Why do you think, just to start off, why do you think it's important for coaches to maintain control of their emotions during games?
Well, on a number of levels, but I think, we ask our athletes to try to maintain their emotions and their control so that they're focused and they're able to produce the best possible performance. And it's the same thing for us,
Yeah.
us being as coaches, right? Like we need to be able to deliver on the day. And if we're all over the place and scatterbrained or reacting emotionally, then our athletes will feed off that. And that's not always a good thing, especially on game day, when game day, it's about the athletes, really. It's not about the coach, especially in rugby. It's so not about the coach in rugby on game day. So if, it's just sit back, relax, and enjoy the work you've done throughout the week.
Yeah, and that's saying it like that sounds quite easy. What do you think some of the reasons why coaches will struggle to control their emotions?
I think there's a number of ways to look at it. First is, not all coaches have been players before, but I think majority of coaches in rugby have played the game before. And so they're, first and foremost an athlete, and then they move into coaching. So the great thing about being an athlete in rugby is, and in any sport, is you get to play the game. You get to take all your energy, all your thoughts, all of that stuff, and you get to play the game. And so your frustrations, everything gets to go physically into the game. Whereas as a coach, you have no outlet on game day. The only outlet you have is your voice and your actions. And I think we have a hard time, recognizing that we're not playing the game, and we tend to see the game in our mind and react to the game as if we're playing, and we can't really physically do anything about it. So I think that's why it comes out emotionally. That's why it comes out in actions.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I know for a fact, and I didn't do this until I really got into sports psychology, but coaches don't prepare. We don't prepare mentally. We don't prepare for our own game day performance the way we require our athletes to do so. And I think that that's a huge downfall for a lot of coaches, is they go in and they'll just go, well, I'll just coach the way I usually coach. But how do you want to behave? How do you want to react? Where do you want to put your energy on game day? Well, you have to prepare mentally for that kind of stuff. And so you have to have a plan in place. You have to know exactly what you want to do. And that's, I think, is a huge factor in being able to control your emotions, and being able to say the right thing at the right time, do the right thing at the right time, make the appropriate substitutions at the right time. All of those decisions that you make, you have to have a level head to be able to do it.
Yeah, and from a personal coaching point of view, that's definitely one thing that helped me a lot, is just that game day routine. What am I doing 3 hours before the game? What am I doing 2 hours before the game? And just having that structure definitely helped and took the randomness away from it.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with athletes. So what's good for the athlete is good for the coach, and vice versa.
That's great, right? So we might come back to that again. I'll just stay on the lead up to it. So when a coach does lose control of their emotions, how does it affect them in terms of their decision making? And also, you touch a little bit on the athletes on the field, how it affects them as well.
The first thing, if we look at how the athlete is affected, is, and I kind of said it in the intro there, is on game day, the coach has really, in rugby, has zero impact and should have zero impact. Like your impact is during the practice week, is during practice sessions, so that you're delivering all of your knowledge into those athletes, so that on game day, really, they're the ones in control, because technically you should be up in the stands enjoying the show, right? So how does it impact is you're trying to make an athlete react to what you're thinking when you see it. So there's a delay, right? You see it, you react, you say something, you say it to the athlete. By the time the athlete does the thing that you think you wanted them to do when you had the reaction, that time is gone, long gone and past, right? So you're creating, indecision in your athletes by trying to give them the right answer at the right time.
Yeah,
right?
And yeah, absolutely. And some coaches may have emotion control battles with their athletes, but also referees as well, and that's the same kind of thing. You see a law interpreted how you thought it should have been or shouldn't have been, and you react in that delayed fashion, right?
Absolutely. And you're not getting the same vantage point as the referee. You're not getting the same vantage point as the athletes. And really at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what you think as a coach. Like, take it up with the referee at halftime, or more importantly, take it up with the referee at the end of the game. But imagine the way that I think about it for coaches who really are losing their marbles, or losing control emotionally on game day, is if you were in a regular desk job and your boss came and jumped all over you and was telling you, push that button, to say right this, do that, respond this way. How would you react? You would go crazy. You'd be on edge all the time, and that's how the athletes are reacting, right?
Yeah.
You don't want people when they're trying to make the best decisions and to have peak performance. You don't want to be yelling at them.
No, absolutely. Okay, so from your experience, you touched on it a little bit earlier. What are some of the first steps you'd advise coaches to take if this is an area that they struggle with?
I think the first thing is for them to be self-aware. And the best way of being self-aware is to have somebody videotape you over a number of practices, over a number of games, and just take a look at your behavior. Take a look at what you do and when you do it. Okay, granted, when you know you're being videotaped, you're going to change your behavior, but at least you're going to get an idea of it, because under pressure, your natural behavior is going to come out, and you'll get some glimpses of what you usually do. So that's like self-awareness, being aware of what you're like. And then how do you want to behave, right? It's kind of like, how do you want to perform? How do you want to be? And so if you want to be calm, then what are some ways that, what are some triggers that elevate that emotion, that trigger you to lose control? But what are some things that help you manage that control? So I'll give you a personal example. Like for me, I can't, even though we're allowed, I can't stand on the sideline with my team, because there's the team running, the subs running up and down. You got the referees, you got the people in the stands, you got everybody yelling and chirping, and that gets me riled up, and I want to chime in. So the way that I manage that is I would stand in the end zone, although a lot of people didn't like that, but I'd stand in the end zone and I'd be quiet for the most part, way more quiet than I was if I was on the sideline. So that was a way of managing my emotion.
Yeah, that's where you'll find me on game day too.
Yeah. And that's a big thing for a lot of coaches, provided, of course, you're not just moving your screaming to the end zone rather than on the sideline, right? Yeah. So that was the thing for me. I also didn't stand around anybody. As soon as I coached with a long time good coach and colleague of mine at both at Western and with the junior national programs, and we'd have to stand on the different end zones. If he stood beside me, I would hear him kind of mumble under his breath certain things, and that would trigger me to say. So I think it's really recognizing your environment and what works for you. What are the triggers that tend to get you to fly off the handle? But also practicing emotion control in practices. You ask athletes to practice things in practices. Similarly, as a coach, you need to practice emotion control. How do you react to athletes? How do you want to speak to them? How do you want to speak to the referee, if you have to at all, for I'm not sure what reason, but so all of these things are really important. And then the next thing, so we talked about this self-awareness, this preparation of how you want to be. And then the next thing is, it's a big word now, mindfulness practice, but just being aware of what you're like in the present moment and trying to stay in the present moment, and just being aware of where your thoughts are taking you. And does it need to be said? Does it need to be, voiced? Or is it just you trying to show people around you that you know what you're doing, or that you're dissatisfied with what your athletes are doing? Right? A lot of times we'll react, and really, if we were by ourselves and there was nobody watching us, we probably wouldn't react.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just that point on practicing it. I heard a good method for that is, and you being from Montreal would understand our lovely drivers here in Quebec, and and our traffic conditions, and that's a good way to practice those kind of things. Is if someone cuts you off in traffic, or you're in a traffic jam of some kind, is use that as a moment to practice that emotion control, and imagine that's on the sideline of a game.
Absolutely, 100%. And any situation in life that tends to, trigger your emotions is to practice it there, because if you're able to practice it there, then you're much more aware of what's going on around you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Okay. So other than that, what are some other tools you'd suggest for coaches so they've identified that they've got this issue? They recognize, okay, I'm starting to really creep up in my levels of emotions and that it's getting to a negative point, what are some ways that they can kind of pull themselves off the edge of the cliff and bring themselves back down to a kind of a satisfactory emotional level?
It's just like with athletes, and it's with any performer, being able to rein in your emotions is really about knowing there's a point of no return, right? Like you have to recognize when you're getting up there and then come back, step away, it's like that, when you're dealing with kids, like I'm going to count to 10, I'm going to remove myself from the room, and I just need to get away, because there are things that are going to trigger you, right? But it's recognizing where your point of no return is, because everybody has it. And as soon as you go over that cliff, you're done. Right? You're going to have, you've lost it, and you're going to have a hard time coming back. So recognizing that, being able to bring yourself back, step away, breathing techniques, as I said, mindfulness techniques, being able to recognize what's going on around you and breathe, relax, calm down. Those are things that they are skills. They're not just tools, but they're skills that you have to practice, right? So you can't just say, okay, on game day, I'm going to be calm. Well, you have to practice that. It's just like you wouldn't expect your kicker to slot a conversion kick if you kind of go, okay, today you're going to try this for the first time. That's not going to work, right? And especially under pressure. So practicing those types of things. So if you think of any type of tool that you would give your athlete to learn how to manage emotions and to manage whether it's anger or volatility or whatever it is, those same exact tools are used for coaches. Breathing, relaxation, mindfulness, knowing what your zone is, all of those things are the same.
That's great. All right. And what about for that coach who's tried a number of methods? They've had some early success, but then they, I don't know, for want of a better word, relapse into that loss of control.
Yeah. It's interesting when we talk about relapse, as you call it, a lot of things that, or a big reason that usually that happens is the individual has stopped using or adopting the behaviors that they did use in the first place to be successful. So if they were creating their plan and their structure of how they wanted to prepare on game day, and then they stop using them, they potentially can, quote unquote, relapse, right? So as I said, it's kind of like, how do you're taking some medication, things are going well, you're starting to feel better, and then as soon as you start to feel better, even though you still got, half the jar of medication to take, you're like, you know what, I'm good, I'm going to stop. And well, the stuff's going to come back. Yeah,
no, that's a fair point. And there's some good stuff in there for coaches, I reckon. What if a coach wanted to try and find some resources or websites or reading material to help them with this? What direction would you point them in?
I would certainly start looking at any type of sports psychology stuff. And there's the Australian Institute of Sport, the AIS, has a lot of really good resources for athletes and coaches. I know there's other resources out there. I've just been familiar with those. For some reason, I've tagged on to those, and so there's a lot of information there. Also, any sport psychology text, which is like an applied text, how-to kind of text, anything that applies for an athlete will apply for a coach. It's the same thing. Performance is performance, whether you're the one playing or whether you're the one coaching. Okay,
and that Australian Institute of Sport one, that's on their website?
Yeah,
okay,
it is.
Great. All right, I'll put that in the show notes and lead the listeners to it, and I'll check it out myself for sure.
Yeah. I've got some stuff on my website that I put up. It's elitemindperformance.com.
Okay.
So under resources, I've got things there. I think if you look under performance psychology or sports psychology, there's going to be a lot of great information for athletes. And as I said, it applies to the coach as well. Yeah,
great. Okay, just to finish off, your private practice there, Elite Mind Performance, what's that about? How you're multi-sport there and across all kind of fields?
Yeah, so I work with athletes, coaches, all ages, all sports, all backgrounds, and I basically, exactly what we're talking about, I help them basically perform to the best of their ability. So, some athletes will come in and they need to manage their anxiety. Some athletes come in and they're like, I want to make the next level team, or I want to go on to the OHL, or I want to go to the national program, and I want to make sure that I know how to use imagery and visualization, and I've got a plan, and I know how to manage my emotions, and I'm doing some goal setting, all of these things. So it could be anything. Some athletes have had a disappointing performance and they want to rebound from that, so we work on that. So there's all kinds of different things, and it's all about that mind and managing your mindset and being able to perform at your best, because we all know you can have all the technical skills in the world, but if on game day you can't produce those, or you can't transfer from practice to game, then that usually is within the 6 inches between your ears, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and if someone wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, they can contact me on my website, elitemindperformance.com. They can also reach me on Facebook, Elite Mind Performance. Those are the best ways.
Okay, perfect. And I'll put all those up on the website as well, so people can check it out too. All right, great. Well, we always end the show with the same 4 closing questions. When you were a kid growing up, who was your favourite rugby player or even athlete as you were getting into sport or later on in your teen years?
Yeah. Well, when I started rugby, I started quite late. I played all kinds of other sports, and I only started when I was 20. And really, what really drew me to the sport was, well, obviously I was with some friends who played the sport, but also the 91 World Cup was a big thing, the men's World Cup. So, people that I looked up to, because I played scrum half, were a lot of the great scrum halves of the time, but also I was really taken by the New Zealand team and the Southern Hemisphere teams, really. So a lot of their players, Sean Fitzpatrick and Zinzan Brooke and George Gregan, I can't even pronounce his name, but Joost van der Westhuizen.
Yeah.
I butchered that one, but anyways, so those guys, those were really, and they weren't, women's rugby was kind of in its infancy, so there weren't too many female athletes that you looked up to or you could really find, and especially with the lack of internet and whatnot. So
well,
those were the people that I looked up to.
Yeah, great. There's some great names in there for sure, and George Gregan was definitely one of my favourites as well. The women's game is definitely on the world stage now. So who's one of your favourite rugby players going around at the moment?
Well, I'm kind of biased because all of these players that I really like, I've coached. So
that's great. That's awesome.
Like right now, like Jen Kish, obviously the captain of the women's sevens team, and Kelly Russell. Kelly Russell, I coached since she was 13 or whatever, and Ashley Patzer, who's now Ashley Stacey. But all of those, the great athletes, just amazing what they've done and the dedication that they've had to really. It's basically take the leap, right? Take women's rugby for this, it was an unknown thing. And now with the Olympics, and just really set that standard super high for Canada and for sevens rugby in the world.
Absolutely.
And I think that what their dedication and everything they've put into it just to really bring the game to the next level has been amazing. And
and the date of recording this, the sevens kicks off in 3 days' time, so that's going to be amazing to see those women running around and playing for their country. Yeah. Okay. Third question. Who's one of your favourite high-profile coaches going around?
High-profile coaches? Well, I've got one is Sasha Werlick, and I wouldn't say that she's so much high profile, but I've had an opportunity to coach with her and to work with her, not only as a coach, but also I worked with her from a performance psychology perspective, and she's with the Netherlands women's sevens team, and she's basically taken over their program and really turned it around. She's done some amazing things, and I really like the way she operates and her vision for the sport and her approach with the athletes. So, she's someone that I would work with any day, and I would send athletes to her any day. Unfortunately, she's across the pond in another country, but yeah.
Last question. What about someone who's, grassroots coach chipping away, who deserves a shout out for the work they're doing?
Definitely Jen Russell. I'm biased because these are all Western alumni and people I've
Cool,
coached,
cool.
but
Yeah.
Jen Russell has just been appointed the head coach of the York University women's rugby
Yeah.
team, and she's really taken a grasp of it, and she's going to do an excellent job because she's taking it really, really seriously. She's approaching it like a full-time position and a professional coaching position. So I think
great.
she's going to turn the program around. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I saw that that she was appointed, and I was thinking that definitely need to reach out to her and get her on the show, maybe after the end of her first season to see what the experience was like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she's going to do an amazing job there.
Great, that's awesome. We'll keep an eye on that for sure. Okay, well, thanks a bunch for giving up your time to come on the show, and I know personally this is an area that I'm always working on, and it's something I got a bunch out of it. I've got quite a few notes written down that I'm going to look over, and definitely the websites that you referred the listeners to, I'll be checking out as well. So yeah, I really appreciate you giving up your time. So thanks very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us on Twitter at RugbyCoachSCNR or via the website at therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.